Welcome to Ritual and Myth, Part 2. Meals in the Bible are complicated, though the visual images do detail some very interesting parallels. I was particularly interested in the parallel between them and their livestock. I also like that she compares a menu to a poem. Here, we're going to take a look at some rituals from antiquity in Iceland. One is Thor's hammer. They were worn, much like crosses, around their necks. Davidson reminds us that we can learn a great deal from the mythologies of earlier people, and by doing so enrich ourselves in viewing our own beliefs more clearly. She warns, however, that we must be ready to accept them on their own terms, which are most likely very different from our own beliefs and practices today. Because these works are composed by poets whose aim is to create an artistic piece as well as one reflecting the beliefs of the people, they fall into the categories of literary and rationalized versions of myth, as described in Chapter 7, page 68. Please note that the excerpt contains examples of rationalization, syncretism, and a humorism. Odin is Supreme Allfather. The text introduces us to a number of people whom he had favor with and gave enchanted gifts to. Also, since he possesses the great spear Gugnir and could start war, and he did, this accounts for the heathen period, he apparently has much in common with other Germanic war gods, including Tiwaz and Wodan. Tiwaz, however, was also associated with justice. Although Odin had in the main taken the place of Tiwaz at the close of the heathen period, memories of the earlier battle still lingered. The text goes into some depth, describing the various ways that Valkyries have been portrayed, concluding that poets have worked diligently over the years to change view of Valkyries from bloodthirsty. Berserkers are of note because just as Odin can mitigate positive behaviors, making soldiers tired or forgetful, he can also provide energy and skill in battle, as with the Berserkers. Thor has to go through a series of trials, just as Heracles and Dionysius. He did, however, have a cult following as well, possibly more akin to Demeter, but still no less important to daily social life. We are next introduced to the Vanir, or fertility gods. The chief deities are Freyr and Freyja. Of course, funeral rites will be part of that cycle. We then explore the idea that most prominent gods are masculine, and we don't even see worship of a Mother Earth. Next, we look at the many faces of Odin, seeing him as a shamanic shapeshifter. When we look at the gods of the dead, we see a link between Odin and the seemingly unrelated Vanir. Again, this coupling could be attributed to the cycle of death and rebirth, or even the structuralist dichotomy requiring both life and death. In either event, burial traditions and the like will be directly related to the preeminent deity associated with the region, and sometimes the variation of story that they adhere to. While that was usually Odin or Thor, it wasn't always the case. We round out by looking at Loki, whom most of us are familiar with by now. Dionysius was born of Semele and Zeus, though the circumstances surrounding his birth were more fantastical. After requesting that she see Zeus in all his glory, his mother was burned to smithereens. Zeus saves the infant and sews him into his leg until term, where he's hidden and raised by sea nymphs. Before being safely rerouted to the island where the sea nymphs would care for him, Zeus is forced to turn him into a kid to protect him from Hera. Dionysius is the god of wine and revelry. Often seen as the opposite of the Apollonian, Apollo-styled aesthetic, which is more mathematics-based. Here are some rituals associated with his worship. Unlike Heracles, the story does not on his heroic deeds, stating only that Rhea instructed him in the rites of initiation and gave him the initiant's robe. More focus is placed on the way he drives men mad to prove he is a god, though many else befall him on account of that propensity as well. Again, Dionysius is a liminal figure. His worshippers are also viewed as liminal, at least during the traditions, which include pretending to be something you're not, drunkenness, and debauchery. This week you will have 2 questions. The first one is to consider ritual in the context of myth. Do you practice any rituals related to a story? Which ones? The second discussion is to do your best to summarize the main points from the Norse rituals section. Again, as we stated before, it's very paratactic, so sometimes it can be difficult to tease out exactly the order of operations for some of those stories.